In this video, I'm going to detail some examples of one-God rhetoric used in ancient cultures to contextualize what many people get confused on, which is this idea of monotheism in the Bible. With this presentation, I'm going to show that there is actually no monotheism in the Bible, at least by using statements of incomparability and one-God rhetoric. So I'm going to be showing some examples as to what I mean by this. All verses in English in this presentation are going to use the NRSV version of the Bible, and any other translations that I will use in these examples will be cited with their original translator for the non-biblical works. So without further ado, let's get to these examples. There are various examples in the biblical text. There are many of them in Isaiah and Deuteronomy especially, that seem to show the author saying that either there are no other gods like the God of Israel, or direct statements by the God of Israel that there are no other gods beside him. That kind of rhetoric being employed. If you want to pause, you can look at this list. In Deuteronomy, there is a particularly interesting case of this where in the first few chapters, it says there is no other besides him, where the author is making the declaration that the God of Israel there's no one like him. You also have the Song of Moses in Deuteronomy 32, where there's a statement that there is no God besides me. That's placed in the words of Adonai. However, if we actually look deeper into Deuteronomy, we'll actually find that Deuteronomy appears to presuppose that other gods exist, and it actually compares the God of Israel to other gods. So in Deuteronomy 10, you have an example like, Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords. Worship him, all you gods. And this passage, by the way, is actually from the Dead Sea Scrolls, as is evidenced by Deuteronomy from what we have from these sources. There's also another passage in here, by the way, that I forgot to put in, but it's found on my website if you guys want to go check it out. The article that I have on my website will go into much greater depth than this video will, but I'm just going to be showing a couple of examples and just how it is that this can't be used to negate the existence, or at least deny the existence, of other gods. We also continue to Isaiah, which many people will cite passages like Isaiah 43:10, which says, "Before me no God was formed, nor shall there be after me." So that seems to be a pretty blunt statement that no other gods exist, right? Well, not exactly. You see that in Deutero-Isaiah, as scholars refer to it as, regardless of if you accept it or not, Isaiah 40 through 48 is concerned with God's capacity to act and have power over things, and it is a polemic against idol worship. So the God of Israel is talking about the ridiculousness of using idols, and he makes a lot of taunting statements saying that there are no other gods like me or beside me. We actually continue to see this in Isaiah, where Isaiah actually is referred to as the Lord of hosts, or Adonai Sabaoth, and this seems to presuppose that God actually has a heavenly army. So the belief in the day was that God wasn't the only, that there were many gods in the heavens. Paul even seems to reflect this belief, and I go over that in my article, but for this time's sake, the phrase Lord of Hosts seems to presuppose the existence of other divine agencies that can be called upon. It also goes to show that, for example, in Isaiah 40, lift up your eyes on high and see who created these. He who brings out their hosts and numbers them, calling them all by name. It never says that he creates them out of nothing or like that. It just mentions these hosts of heaven. And I even include a section that has, like in the middle of this slide, that has a lot of instances where Adonai Sabaoth is used. So what really hits hits the nail into the coffin for this argument that Isaiah is denying the existence of other gods, is that he uses the same rhetoric for talking about cities like Babylon. So if you want to pause this here, there's actually these verses that talk about Babylon, and it's a polemic against Babylon, where Babylon apparently thinks that there are no other nations that can fight against it. And so, like, for example, your wisdom and your knowledge led you astray, and you said in your heart, I am, and there is no one besides me. Clearly, Isaiah is not saying that there are no other cities. All he is portraying is that Babylon thinks that she is invincible, but she's not. You also have the same kind of statement going on in Zephaniah 2, where you have Nineveh, who also says the same exact thing as Babylon. I am, and there is no one else. Clearly, Zephaniah, or the author of Zephaniah, didn't think that Nineveh was the only city in existence, but rather it's just an emphasis on the power and the untouchability or the incomparability of power to the other cities. This rhetoric is also used for other things, not even just cities. It's also used for people and objects. Like this one in Judges 7, there is no other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash. And this one in Song of Songs, my dove, my perfect one, is the only one, the darling of her mother. Clearly these statements are not denying the existence of other things that are being compared here. All they're doing is they're emphasizing the importance of the one thing that they're mentioning. So in the case of Judges, it's the sword of Gideon. In the case of Song of Songs, it's just one of the lovers being mentioned. You also have the Shema, which I should have put this in the Deuteronomy section, but the Shema doesn't actually affirm that there's only one God in existence. The only thing it affirms is that Adonai is the God of Israel, because Israel's God is Adonai, because he is the one that they're covenanted to. The last part, Adonai Echad, is actually just a statement of the fact that there's only one God of Israel. There's only one Adonai, which is true. There is only one Adonai in this context. So in this particular example, I mentioned the Quran. There's actually a funny little example that I came across as I was reading the Quran for the first time. And this is being used of the Pharaoh. So this is a story in the Quran in the 28th Surah. So this isn't to say that Allah is comparing himself to other deities. All this is that this is a story about the Pharaoh being in a contest with Moses. And so it says, Pharaoh declared, O chiefs, I know of no other God for you but myself. So bake bricks out of clay for me, O Haman, and build a high tower so I may look at the God of Moses, although I am sure he is a liar. So it's clear that in the Quran, it's acknowledged elsewhere that the Egyptians are polytheists, especially the Pharaoh. I include citations to that on my website. But of course, the Pharaoh isn't denying that other gods exist. He's just asserting his importance to his people over the other gods. So then we also have one God rhetoric even being used by polytheistic cultures. So for example, it's also used of Marduk. You can pause this slide if you want to read the sources, or go to my website again if you want to check them out. But Marduk uses the same kind of incomparability language, saying none other among the gods can equal him, none among the gods can rival him. Baal also uses the same kind of language here. He says no enemy, well, the author of the text says no enemy has risen against Baal, no foe against the cloud rider. Clearly Baal has enemies if you read the Baal cycle, but it's just that the author believes that Baal was the mightiest, and also, by the way, Baal is the son of El, who is the highest god. So, one thing to note that's interesting is that the only time that the term Elyon appears as an epithet to any of these deities in Ugarit is actually of Baal, but it's obviously the case that Baal is not the chief of the gods. He's really just the son of El, but he does take his stand in the council of the gods. You can read more about this and see this translation by Mark Smith. Shamash also has the same kind of language attributed to him. For example, no one among the gods is equal with thee, similar to the statement about Marduk. No one who is supreme like you in the whole pantheon of gods. There is none who toils but you. Clearly, he's not the only one who toils, but it's just a figure of speech to say that really he's the one who's the most important. You also have this one for Nanshi, where it says there are no divine powers matching your powers, but clearly Nanshi is not the highest god, because Nanshi is actually the daughter of Enki in Sumerian mythology, so of course the same kind of thing applies to the god of Israel. Inanna has similar descriptions in various texts as well. No one can lay a hand on your precious divine powers. All your divine powers, no one can walk before you. Clearly, there are other divine beings who can walk before Inanna, but for the sake of this author, Inanna is really the only one who matters. Ishtar, again, also has similar statements. This one's a little bit more of a loose incomparability statement, but I think it still applies. You can check out the translation that I have on my site. The Vedas, now these ones are really interesting because, so in the Vedic tradition, you have three main corpuses of literature. You have the Rig Veda, you also have the Atharva Veda, the Yarjur Veda, and the Atharva Veda. So, or actually it was the Sama Veda, actually, now that I see it. However, notice how of Indra, there are similar statements that are almost exactly like the ones used in Isaiah 43. They say, there is none other than you who is like you and who commands powers and virtues. I have no rivals. I throw off the adversaries. I emerge the victor, greater than the challengers. There is none other than you who rules over life forms and materials in existence, and yours are the laws of existence, no one else's. There is none other like you, neither heavenly nor earthly, neither born nor yet to be born, except for the fact that Indra is not the only god in the Vedic pantheon, and it should go without saying, because Indra is, while he's the chief god, there are other gods like Agni and Varuna who also serve sort of as like the Vedic trinity, so to speak. This sort of council of divine beings who are very powerful, but the author of these Vedas, of these sort of sayings and mantras, is saying that Indra is the most powerful and that no one really can compare to him. But clearly the author of these sort of writings is not actually monotheistic. They're not contorting these statements to make him say that Indra denies the existence of other gods. It's just not how it works. This one is also interesting because this is found in the great Cairo hymn to Amun-Re. You have examples on this text like, he is the form one, the creator of everything that is, the only one, the creator of things that shall be, only who hath no second. But clearly Amun-Re to the Egyptians was not the only god, although he was, at least at this time period, this syncretic sort of deity was the chief one and the one who brought about the other gods. I also have this list here that shows gods mentioned other than Adonai in the biblical texts. It's worth taking a look at all these citations. There's a lot of them. This can include anything from gods mentioned in a council that Adonai Elohim is a part of, or idols, or any other sort of divine being or being of a spiritual nature, as Michael Heiser would put it. So take a look at these passages. They're rather fascinating. So in conclusion, one God rhetoric is used not just of henotheistic cultures, but also polytheistic cultures, so the use of it doesn't negate the existence of the other deities. The fact that this one God rhetoric is being used doesn't necessitate that only one God exists, but that only one God is important in the context of the covenant. And it's also a rhetorical tool used to show that that a particular God being mentioned isn't more important than the others. So that would be it for this presentation. Let me know what you guys think about it. And have a good evening.